welcome to the Leveraging Analytics in Higher Education webinar. We'd like to thank you very much for joining us today. Today we will have three speakers: Matt Frederick, partner at eCapital Advisors; Tammy Kumpf, IBM Solutions Director here at eCapital Advisors; and Mark Schaefer. With that, I'm going to turn the webinar over to Matt Frederick.
Today joining us from Avnet, we have industry expert in the public sector and higher education space. His name is Mark Schaefer, and he'll be going over some industry challenges and some solutions that IBM Cognos brings to the market to help with those. I'll be turning that over to Mark in a second. I'm also going to talk about some of our current higher education clients and some of their ways that they're utilizing technology to help them perform and succeed better with analytics. And then we'll also be looking at some of the IBM products out there in the market space available today, and then we'll just be doing a quick product demo to kind of just highlight some of the features and functionality that are available out there for you. Really quickly, I know some of you out there are new to IBM, but also to eCapital Advisors. I'm assuming you've heard of IBM before. IBM is a very large investor in this space, a space that we call performance management. Some people call it enterprise performance management, but also today we're mostly speaking about a concept called analytics. eCapital Advisors is a niche performance management consulting firm. We are specialized in this area. We're working with what we consider the top vendors in this space. We are based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but we have resources and consultants based throughout the United States. We are one of the top premier business partners focused on IBM Cognos business analytics software. Really quickly, before I turn it over to Mark, I wanted to quickly talk about, when we talk about analytics, and you'll hear us say analytics and business analytics quite a bit today, exactly what we're talking about. We recognize that in the marketplace in general, but also especially in higher education, there's a lot of competing priorities out there for how you guys every day are faced with different pressures and different decision-making points around a lot of different things. Most of you focused on managing your students and your portfolios, but also managing a lot of different operations around space and activities at your universities. What some of our universities seem like they're a conglomeration of 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10 different business units once you factor in dormitories and food service and different activities around alumni and foundation and fundraising, endowment management, but then also things around activities around sports and managing some of those things. So there's a lot of different need for data and for information to provide information to people to make decisions about the universities. Some of the highlighted areas that IBM's recognized the need for analytics across universities in are highlighted here, and Mark will go a little bit more into some of these things. But what we've noticed at universities especially is there tends to be departmental silos of data and decision making quite a bit more than what I see at traditional commercial companies. And I think that's part of the way that higher education has always done business. Departments make decisions based on information that they have. A lot of offline spreadsheets, models, data sources. Higher education is moving a lot towards cloud-based solutions where different departments or different schools are acquiring and purchasing different pieces of technology to help manage and run their businesses. Across all these different areas, it's very challenging to find like an SAP ERP solution that can meet the needs of all these different areas of the university. But still, there is a consistent need to aggregate and pull this information together so that people can make informed decisions about the university, and hopefully affect better outcomes for the university in the long term, but then also for the students, the staff, and the faculty of the university. So that's what we're talking about today, is how can we leverage the information that you currently are already gathering, aggregating, and managing at your universities, a lot of it departmentalized, to answer key questions about the university about how do we do in the past, how are we tracking today, why did that happen, and then based on the information, creating plans for the future. A typical commercial company will maybe look 1 to 2 years into the future when they're doing their planning, their forecasting, talking about different scenarios or how they want to manage their businesses. Our typical university is looking 10, 20 years into the future. The goal of a commercial organization to maximize profits, in the short term for stakeholders, is very, very different in the higher education space. How you become competitive, how you stay competitive, attract the best students, but also, how do you make sure that your university is competitive today, 10 years from now, and even 100 years from now? So the missions are quite a bit different. So the technology, while it's the same across the board, how companies and traditional universities use it are very different. So we have a lot of capabilities to talk about today around reporting, dashboarding, scorecarding, traditional business intelligence capabilities, but also a lot more ad hoc analysis, trend analysis, statistical analysis, how you can create better scenarios around information for the future, how you model the university from a departmental perspective, because we recognize there are specific departmental needs, but also to pull that together for the university to get a consistent, clear view of the entire college university. And then IBM has also invested quite a bit of money in new predictive models, right? So, how can we make sure that we are generating the best outcome? What type of students should we be attracting to our university that have the best chance of success in school, but also outside of school after they graduated and moved on? So there's a lot of information and a lot of technology available to universities today to help with those things. So that being said, on business analytics and software and eCapital, I'm going to turn it over to Mark to give you a little overview of the industry and kind of how IBM and Avnet are looking at the industry right now.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody, for your time today, and thank you, Matt, for the introduction. Just want to start off by demonstrating things that you already know. Basically, the higher education space it continues to grow, and as it grows, it's faced with new challenges, some same challenges, but also new challenges. But what is consistent is that as it grows, the emphasis on getting higher returns from your IT investments continue, and you're under a lot of scrutiny, not only within your own institutions and in your own environments, but also from the public perspective. And with that, analytics can be used to help you get a higher return on that investment. So the budget climate is getting better, but the pressure continues within your industry to continue to do more with less. As you can see, fewer campuses are experiencing budget cuts over the recent years, but the IT budgets, that is, are still under pressure. Even if they aren't being cut, you still are asked to do more and get a higher return on your IT investments. Those of you, I don't know the breakout between a public nonprofit institution versus a private institution, but because of a lot of the political pressures going on, your public funded institutions are experiencing more pressure on those IT budgets. And at the same time, it becomes more important for you to not only use the investment you're making in IT products and services and solutions, but being able to utilize the data and the resources that you have in front of you to make better decisions. Also, on top of that, there's pressure. There's the National Education Technology Plan that's come out from the federal government that is emphasizing that all institutions improve in these 5 areas. From a learning, they want to make sure that you match the talent to the task, and that you're actually teaching what the students need to know to be successful in a way that is easy for them based on the different ways of learning, and also in improving your effectiveness there. In order to do that, you got to have data to perform assessments so that you can diagnose and modify the conditions of learning and the content that you're delivering, so that that content is absorbed by the student population. And then, in order to deliver the correct information and subject matter, etc., you got to have a consistent teaching method, which includes continuous professional learning, collaboration, and blending of all the relevant resources and information available to you. And that takes what Matt referred to and talked about earlier, so all the different silos that exist in many institutions. You got to be able to spread across those silos and use information from your entire environment so that you're making those proper decisions. And that comes into the infrastructure space, so that you have a valid learning environment, one that is safe for the students, safe for the faculty, one that is efficient and has the proper infrastructure in place, so that you can always increase the learning environment. And then most importantly, well, not just as importantly, is productivity, so that as you make investments, not only from a technology perspective, but in infrastructure, in faculty, in all the other components that it takes to create a learning institution, you have the ability to plan, manage, monitor, and report how that money is being spent, and how is it being managed to meet the institution's goals. So one of the ways of doing that is analytics, and EDUCAUSE runs a panel, an IT panel every year, and out of the top, in the recent study that came out in September, of the top 10 IT priorities, 5 of those top 10 were analytics related. Improving the operational efficiency through the use of your IT resources. IT resources all have one thing in common. They create, manipulate, store, and generate data. And that data needs to be used in a variety of different ways, not just the direct, within the direct activity that a specific department, agency, or application may generate that data for. With that, it allows you to integrate your IT into the overall institutional decision-making process, and using the analytics to support those institutional outcomes. As you are able to utilize this data through analytics, then it helps you transform your overall business through the IT, and it makes IT more important as it pertains to the overall mission of the institution. And it allows you to support your mission through high power computing, the big data solutions and activities that come through, and obviously the analytics. As part of the same study, analytics is becoming more prevalent within the industry. And compared to 2 years ago, people feel today analytics is more important than 84% of the respondents, as opposed to 15% that thought it's just as important 2 years ago, and less than 1% think it's less important. So obviously, as analytics becomes more pronounced within the IT environment as a whole, the higher education community is seeing its value and the importance of having a analytics strategy and solution in your institution for your overall success. And the study also validates that the trend of analytics is here to last. It's not just a fad that's here in 2012, but 2014 and beyond. 86% of the same respondents felt that it's going to continue to become more important as we move along the evolution of IT within the higher education space. Key findings around the same study was everyone knows that analytics is widely important, but the data use in most institutions is still limited to just reporting. And what that means is whatever department, whatever individual is running their reports, they're using it in their siloed environment. And so it's important to take that data and collaborate across the organization, across the institution, so you can make institution-wide decisions. The programs that are most successful include your internal resources, your IT, your functional leaders, and your executives all working in partnership from an IT perspective. So it's increasing the role of IT in the decision-making process so that you become more proactive and provide data that's allowing your leadership to make decisions that are validated with real live on-the-ground information. But it's just as important to realize that the investment needs to be not just in the IT. It needs to be in expertise around analytics and the process and the policies that you have on how you collect that, how you use the data and how you collect additional data. And that's where eCapital comes in. They partner with Avnet as their distribution partner, but IBM from an analytics perspective to provide the tools to use the data, but eCapital is able to bring the whole package together and allow you to develop those processes and policies that are important so that you understand what data you have and what benefits you can get from it. The institutions that are making progress around that are taking into consideration their culture and their process, all their data reporting tools, the expertise and their governance around their infrastructure, so that they can make predictions and projections on what actions is necessary for them to take in order to meet the overall success of their mission or goals. So with all that in mind, what is analytics and how can you apply it in your specific institution? And that's what we want to emphasize today with. So to achieve the deeper insight, you must look at three critical areas that impact the entire institution. Specifically, what are your goals, what are your financial objectives, and what are the operational requirements? Each of these areas impact how the institution as a whole or as an individual department or work group measures your overall performance. Every institution, department, and work group within has specific goals that you must achieve, and every mission comes with specific financial objectives, operational requirements that you must achieve in order to obtain your mission. And when you take all that stuff together and you use that information collectively, you then can give your leaders the deep insight that they need to become smarter and run your organization more effectively. So IBM's campus solutions for higher education with the services and solutions from eCapital enables you to create a new model of higher education around a campus that is interconnected, enriched, and fed with on-the-ground knowledge. Specifically allows you to track your student performance, analyze your instructor development and curriculum and the effectiveness, monitor your attendance and intervention patterns so that you can make sure that you're being efficient in the resources that you're directing towards the students. Manage any of the fundraising that's necessary so that you can advance your investments and your research in order to increase your reputation within the community. All this allows you to measure the effectiveness and the spending against these individual results so that you can report that success to the stakeholders and make sure that you're making proper investments and that you have the resources that you need in order to grow. So some of the business analytics solutions from IBM and eCapitals is going to allow you to do, these specific areas: budgeting and finance planning for higher education. The tuition enrollment blueprint planning allows you to analyze your trends, your histories, your projections. Produce reports that give you the details such as profitability of a single class. Allows you to plan for the entire year so that you can understand from one semester to the next how the students are going to roll through the evolution of their learning, and then provide what-if type modeling scenarios so that you compare different alternatives or what type of capacity you need to do and enroll more students, all while improving your budget accuracy, consistency, by providing integrated planning and greater flexibility. Through your salary, positioning, and control blueprint, this is a component of IBM's higher education services group that was originally developed by eCapital. So that just shows some of the expertise and the depth of knowledge that they have. But it allows you to track the faculty's salary and funding sources, understand the total cost of an individual instructor, and determine those funding sources if they're going to change, run out, and if they do, how do you replace them? What is your total compensation update and changes that you need to do? What are your headcount needs? And what are your salary and position funding plans based on current and long-term economic achievements that you must maintain? And as you maintain and manage your environment from a infrastructure perspective, a campus perspective, and a faculty perspective, you also need to make sure that you have student achievement. The student achievement allows you to integrate data from the multiple sources, provide a single view of students' progress and achievement, so that as you have multiple departments, the engineering department versus the English department, allow all that stuff together and have a total view of an individual student to make sure they're progressing across the board. It allows you to create early warning systems for at-risk students, so that your advisory groups can work with those students and put them on some sort of intervention so that you can keep them in school, keep them enrolled. And it allows you to use collaborative learning communities with the teachers, the students, the parents, and specialists to work together to allow you to implement instructional plans to improve the overall performance. And it all comes down to providing student prevention or retention. The different variables that are critical to students' retention. It gives the administrators dashboards to identify those at-risk students and build those strategies so that you can create better course designs and keep your students on track to graduation. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is making a better student, better prepared for the workforce, and better able to compete in today's environment. There's a lot of things going on in the political environment that talk about unemployment and things. People with higher education, the unemployment rate is less than 5%. And with that, you guys are seeing a large increase in enrollment. It's just as important not to only get them enrolled, but to allow them to graduate so they become productive members of society and continue to grow our economy. So with that, I'm going to pass it back on to Matt Frederick, who's going to go into some specific details about eCapital, their higher education solutions, and some specific case studies. Matt?
Great, thanks, Mark. I just posted in the chat room. If people do have questions, we are leaving time at the end of the webinar for a quick question and answer. If anything comes up throughout the sessions, if you don't like speaking on the general line, feel free to post in the chat room, and Mark and I will try to get to those towards the end of the webinar here. eCapital is focused on several different industries and providing analytics to customers, but one of our top industries is higher education. The majority of our consultants have either only worked in higher education or have been primarily devoted to higher education and helping them implement analytics over their careers. So here's a sampling of some of our clients that we're currently working with the IBM Cognos technology and business analytics. Like I mentioned kind of at the beginning of this, what we see is there are specific needs across each department at university. It's very difficult or challenging to kind of define a one-size-fits-all model just because of the different variances from of how people need to plan their businesses, the different business models, even how they look at their staff members, their faculty, or how that particular piece of the business is run. So what we typically see is a lot of disparate data sources. Universities are not served well by traditional ERP vendors. Typically, even an out-of-the-box HR solution can be challenging for them to run. I'm sure if we went on the phone and went around each university on the call today, we'd find quite a few different source systems, pieces of technology, a lot of homegrown systems you see at universities, and how people are currently managing and tracking information across the universities. We also see a lot of siloed, what IBM has kind of phrased tribal knowledge. You have long-term career people across departments in finance in your central areas that have worked at the universities for a very long time, really understand different components of the university, how it's planned, how it's modeled, and that's stored in those people's heads, so they're kind of the go-to person for each of those areas. There's not a common repository or place where that information is all stored. So those are typical challenges we see at higher education companies that we work with. Let's see if I can go back to that. Clicking too much. See, we work for, across the university we work with, we see a lot of different types of solutions, a lot of different types of activities people are trying to accomplish with our technology. Some of the main items that we work with clients on the most I've kind of highlighted here in blue, but you see a lot of the different areas and of the tools are highlighted here. One of the best things about the technology is you're not buying an out-of-the-box solution that you need to try to adapt your business to. You're buying a flexible toolkit, like Mark mentioned, where we adopt that to how you need to manage your business, how each department needs to manage theirs, but we're still defining those common metrics or those common KPIs that are used across the university to give people access to all that information, centralize it, make it as accurate as possible so that people can then leverage that information. I want to go over just three main kind of examples of universities we've worked with. The first one is the epitome of the disconnected organization, like I mentioned. Very, very large university. Every school, every department was centrally managed, had their own finance and operations area. They managed their own models, a lot of that being done in Excel. One of the most complicated things for the central area was to roll up a simple salary and position plan with all the positions allocated out to funding sources, but also the different fringe benefits to understand really what the plan was, even just for the next fiscal year, with people changing departments, moving around, partially allocated out to different departments, primary and secondary appointments, the differences between faculty and staff. So they look for the IBM technology to help manage that, give them the flexibility they needed to be able to plan their people, but also be able to easily aggregate and pull that information together as needed. So using the IBM Cognos technology, this client now has about 300 budgeting and forecasting users across their university using one common system. They ended up with 2 basic common models that people use to plan throughout the university. The main differences being their medical schools separate from the other schools of the university, just because of the way the medical school wanted to be able to plan. They have about 500 reporting users. Cognos is the key business analytics platform at the university. So whether someone's trying to answer a student question, a budgeting question, a financial or a HR question, they can come to Cognos. All the data is secured. It's set up and modeled for them, so they can easily access that information, update their budgets or their forecasts, but also see historical information, create new scenarios, new budgets, and Cognos is that one source of the truth for them. One of the main things it's done is the CFO projects. It's made their forecasts and their budgets about 30 to 40% more accurate, just based on benefits alone. So using the technology to create plans around healthcare, tuition reimbursement, and all the other benefits they provide to their staff members. This university currently has 200 different jobs that they manage, positions, about 15,000 people, and they have somewhere between 50 to 60,000 funding sources that they use to plan their people out on. So they all use the technology to plan those people. It's all aggregated, so they can easily access information by funding source, by department, and share those people across the university. One of the best things that happens for them is as people are planning and picking their funding sources, they can actually see the information by those funding sources in real time. So there's no overnight processes that need to run, and there's no waiting in the wings. So this is all happening in real time as people are planning and budgeting in real time. This next client is an example of a client that had many different models and plans across the university. Very large athletic organization, very large revenue generator for them, a lot of events that they plan on campus. They needed to be able to easily create different models and scenarios on the fly. They wanted to be able to integrate things like inflation changes or assumption changes into their models, and easily be able to compare those scenarios against each other. The creating a new scenario used to take them several days. Now they can actually cut that down and do that in minutes. So a lot of ROI associated with the implementation, a lot of power that's giving their decision makers across the university. And finally, a client of ours, it's actually a published case study with IBM. You can get it on IBM's website. It's the University of St. Thomas. They had a really unique issue, and maybe it was unique because it's the first time that I'd heard that. It might not be unique to you guys. You might be currently challenged with this right now as well. What led us to needing to do this was, or this project was, University of St. Thomas was trying to get AACSB certified, so their College of Business was working on their certifications. So a lot of requirements around that, around how using different faculty and staff members and who's teaching your classes and what level of certifications they have to teach a certain percentage of your credits and your offerings. And you want to make sure that that's being tracked over time, so it's easily auditable by the accreditation agencies. The easy way to fix that would be to have all of your classes taught by the highest level of professor. St. Thomas realized for two reasons that wasn't going to work for them. One is they actually like being able to offer adjuncts or people with business experience come in and actually teach the classes. They actually think that's very beneficial to the university and to their students. And secondly, their CFO knows that that's not the most optimally financially beneficial. So what they want to be able to do is they want to have a range of professors that they use to teach their courses, but also at the same time meet their accreditation metrics they need in order to retain their accreditation. So what they do is they actually use the IBM Cognos tool set to actually load in their planned schedules. So their program directors are actually in specifying which instructors are going to teach which classes, how many sections of each class do they need. We all know that you don't want to offer too many sections, and so each section doesn't have the maximum number of people. So they can look at historical schedules and figure out what the optimal number of sections to offer in each upcoming semester is, to make sure that they're utilizing their staff and their physical resources, their campuses and their rooms, the most effectively and efficiently. But then also they can incorporate financial metrics into there to make sure that they're meeting their financial metrics, but then also that they're meeting their accreditation routine. So this application is used, every semester for the university to help manage their schedules. And again, this is a published case study at IBM. You can take a look at that and take a look at the information on that. So really quickly, I want to turn it over to Tammy. She's going to go over some of the IBM products and solutions that are available today and how customers are using them. And then we'll come back. I'm going to do a quick demo of some of the products for you, and then we'll do a quick question and answer session.
Super, thanks, Matt. So I kind of want to go through some naming conventions that happen with the IBM Cognos products. So probably the cornerstone product for the IBM Cognos area is their BI product, right, which begins to integrate things like dashboards and scorecards and basic reporting. And it actually has a workspace concept that we'll talk about here in a minute, where I can start to bring all this information together on the screen at one time, or some people talk about bringing it to the glass, right? So that would all happen within the Cognos BI product. The Cognos TM1 product is really that product that starts to do modeling and planning for us, right? I want to model my class schedules. I want to model my business, right? And it'll help us do those. For the predictive area, right, Cognos has a product called SPSS. And that's going to help, based on what we know in the past, it's going to help us predict the future. FSR is kind of that last little piece of that last mile of reporting, right, where we've got to put together some complex annual reports, briefing books that's going to have text, a lot of text with it, and it's going to have crosstabs, things that we might pull from Excel that'll pull that kind of information together. Open pages and algorithmics is really going to help us now manage risk, right? So governance and risk compliance, those two are going to help us with. And then the last piece that you may or may not have heard of is NetTeasa. And as everybody has growing data, right, we need a way to start to store data and get at data in the growth that it's as fast as the data is growing. And so we'll use NetTeasa to do that. We kind of think the secret sauce, and Matt talked a lot to this, the secret sauce to this whole thing is this 64-bit in-memory OLAP engine that IBM Cognos has. And so one of the cool things about it being in memory is the fact that we aren't spinning disks, right? So if I go get something out of a database, I literally have to wait for that disk to spin to get that information out. If we store it in memory, right, we can just go pull it right out of memory, and there's no moving parts to be able to get at the data. So what it'll do for us is it'll start to aggregate data, and it will start to begin to give us hierarchies, right? So we can say, here we've got a problem. I want to drill down and see exactly where that problem came from, right? We can start to put data in there dimensionally, so to speak. We can, when we do our modeling and things like that, you can also begin to do scenario modeling. Like I can do my what-if modeling. What if this happens? What if we have a surge in our medical area, right? Do we have enough staff to do that? And I can begin to do that what-if modeling. And basically, in the end, what it's going to give us is all of our multi-dimensional analysis. Let's go on to the next slide. So as a business user goes into it, or as a user goes into it, this is that workspace that I was talking about. So we want to take those products that we just talked about and start to bring it together, right? So we can bring the data together in TM1 or that 64-bit in-memory OLAP that we talked about. So I can actually use that as a data mart. I can start to bring data together from all over within my organization to be able to report on it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it into this workspace, right? And I can just drag and drop any piece of data that I want in there. I can put filters on there. I can have slider bars in there. I can actually go in, and if it's in a bar chart right now and I want a pie chart, I've got the ability as just a user to manipulate that data to get it to the area that I want it to be in. One of the really cool pieces to this is I actually can, as I'm doing my analysis, right, and I can find a problem, there's something called a Do More button in there. And what that will allow me to do is actually go back to the metadata, if I've got the privileges to do that, and actually add more data to my query to actually do that discovery and then to be able to take action. Probably the biggest thing we see is our mobile application, and particularly with iPads. So one of the things that we support with our applications is the ability to go mobile, right? So whether I'm on a tablet of some sort, whether I've got a BlackBerry or an iPhone or an iPad, I can always get at the data and at these reports that I've created about the data. So the nice part about that is that no matter where I'm at, I can either fetch data or I can have data pushed to my mobile device. So I can still drill up and down. I still have the ability to maneuver within that data. I have the ability to focus in on specific areas of that data, and I can do that all through a handheld device. Probably the most exciting piece that we see in higher education is being able to do predictive analysis. So it's being able to take all the data that you've already captured in the past, right, and then use that to be able to predict the future, right? So I had this graduating class last year that looked like this. It had so many people in it. Here was what we know about those people. So based on that information, right, who's going to graduate this year? Who's those that are right on the bubble? How can I help those that are right on the bubble to make sure that they graduate? And so people are using SPSS to actually drive better outcomes out of their data. And then this is kind of the interesting thing, right? At the rate that everybody is getting data, particularly when we start to look at social media, right? Data volumes are growing incredibly, incredibly fast. So what we want to do is be able to store that data, but also get at that data. And there's some things called dark data, right? Data that we don't even, we're not even using today, right? So how can we put that data all together and then get at it very quickly? And so what we're going to use is NetTeasa to do that. So what NetTeasa really does is it's a parallel processing unit, which will do this for us, right? It'll actually spread the data over a number of different hard drives, but then it'll allow me to bring it up so much faster. I've heard stories about queries that took like 20 to 30 hours to run that NetTeasa can run in just a matter of minutes, right? And it's just because we're spreading the data across so many hard drives, so we're asking nice, clean questions to it, as opposed to asking one big question and doing hundreds of thousands of rows of data, trying to scan it all at once and pick the data out of it. We see this area of our business growing exponentially, and it's really because people are starting to bring in just so much data. Most people we see, their data volumes are growing at least 3 to 5 times the rate that it has grown in the last couple of years. You know, and I guess this is kind of NetTeasa's tagline, right? For it to be speedy, simplistic, scalable, and smart, right? So that we can get that information out. So Matt, I think I'll give it back to you, and you can maybe show a little bit of that.
Sounds good. Let's see, show my screen. Tammy, can let me know if you can see Excel on the screen?
I can.
Great. So like Tammy mentioned, what we want to do is we want to put information in the hands of the end users, right? So they can actually leverage that information, manage data, and easily access all the disparate information that the university is collecting and managing over time. So what we'd like to do is I like to start in Excel because most analysts, financial analysts, business analysts, people across universities, and normal commercial companies, they know Excel. Excel is a place where people live and breathe, and one of the great benefits of the Cognos product line is integration with Excel. So looking in here, you'll see just across the top your normal Excel menus. You see now that there's another menu called TM1, ability to come in and easily then connect to different data sets that I've actually developed and built inside of TM1. So we'll start with one, which is called our standard planning applications. Once we're logged in, there's a button here called Explore. I can easily pull that up, take a look at all the different pieces of data that are involved and stored inside of my TM1 application or my cubes, like Tammy mentioned. So if we come in here and we actually look at the side of my income statement, when I come down and look at the views, got our income statement, you see it actually pulls up the view of our income statement. So people who haven't seen cubes before, it's your typical kind of rows, columns across the top, and we also have across the top different views of that cube we can look at. So a good one to show would be your versions of data. So we can look at actuals, we can look at budget information, variances between those two, both dollars and percentages. We can easily then flip back and forth between those different versions and take a look at that information. And as we look at that, I can easily grab that data and pull it back into Excel, right? So now, by the click of a button, I pulled up my income statement, I pulled it into Excel, and one of the benefits of this is I'm still connected back to the TM1 server, so I can easily come in and do that same thing where I actually click on that, flip to another version. Now that data is in Excel. So as people are in modifying information, behavior information, I can look at it either through native TM1, I can look at it through Excel, or any of the other Cognos interfaces. One of the best things here is typically when you create a report in Excel, it's static. You have static rows, dimensions. So if someone wants to come in and add another account, let's say, into one of my roll-ups, that would break my report. It has to come and navigate and fix my Excel report. The active reports inside TM1 are fully dynamic. So as I scroll down on these different areas, you see I actually have drilling capabilities. So I can actually easily open up and close those, and as information is added into these, I can actually then pull those things up myself. Another example is I can come in and on another tab, I'll come in and I'll actually navigate over to a different set of data. We come in and we look at our expense detail. See again, some information is pulled up for me, all the different expense areas of my university across time, across the top. So I'm seeing that information by month. I'm seeing different drivers or profiles of how I want that data to be spread. I'm able to look at that again by different budgets or forecast versions of data. And I can easily, again, take that information, pull it out to Excel. So that data is out here. But then because this data is in Excel, and I'm still connected back into the server, I can come in and actually take a look at the information. So as we look at bonuses across time for the area of the cube I'm looking at, I have the ability to come in and modify that information. So as I type in data, I can type 9,000 and maybe 10,000 here. That information is now stored inside my cube, inside my Excel sheet here. But if I go back to my TM1 version of that data and I look at it, you'll see that information that I changed has actually been updated in the cube. So as people are working either in Excel or any of the other interfaces and updating, managing different scenarios or forecasts, that data is being changed in real time. Like Tammy mentioned, this data is actually stored in memory or in RAM. So that data is easily available to either the Cognos Business Intelligence tools, to any of the TM1 interfaces. And finally, one of the last things I wanted to show you, we come back into Excel, and we look at, again, another version of my data. And I come over and I maybe look at my strategic finance area. And I come down and I can look at a view of my data of my different KPIs. So these are KPIs that maybe I track at a high level. I track across time for my university, or as part of my maybe a board review, or one of the key targets here is I'm looking at my core operations, but I'm also looking at industry information. I'm looking at how are other universities doing. What is the minimum amount of, or what are the different targets that are out there? What are the minimums that I should be able to hit? And how am I doing against those? So am I doing great as an excellent rating? Am I doing just okay, or are there things I need to work on, right? And again, I can come in, and in this case, I'm looking at this over a very long time frame. One of the best benefits of TM1 is we're not limited to the amount of data, the amount of time that we can look at. So you'll set that up to be whatever is relevant to your university, or the questions that you're trying to answer, or the scenario, the forecast that you're trying to look at. I can easily come in, because it's a cube-based tool, and actually do something called slicing and dicing. So now I've actually taken that and I've moved my dimensions around, so now I'm actually looking at my KPIs by time across the top. I also have built in something called most likely, best case, worst case, test case scenario, so I can easily swap back and forth between those different areas. Again, I'm going to take this information and I'm going to actually slice this out to Excel. One of the benefits of working in an Excel environment is this, you have all the capabilities that you would have working in Excel with all of the information you're pulling back from Cognos. So while I'm working in here, I can easily come in and use any of the Excel capabilities to format these different areas. So as I'm looking at this, let's say I decide to make this more visual for my users, I just want to come in and insert a simple pie chart, right, on this report that I'm creating. So I can come in and let's say I want to look at this economic value add over time to see it automatically added in those different areas for me. A little bit smaller. And then you can come in and say, pick our different years for that. Okay. Move it over a little bit so you can see that on the screen. Now I've added a simple chart to that. Come back over to TM1. And let's say this is a report that I want to be able to share with the university. I can easily, or with other people. So I can easily take this chart and say I want to upload this. And it's all right. It's not liking that. So let me just show you one. So you have the ability to easily come in, create a report in Excel, and then once it's out there, you can easily publish that information out to the university. So that any user can come in, log into the Cognos web portals, and access that information. So this user doesn't have to be an Excel user. They don't have to know the data. They don't have to manage it in that way. They can come in and actually easily get to all the reports that you've actually created and set up for them. You know, in a nice visual manner. And again, you know, as we're looking at this, this is an example of that P&L that we have put out there. As we look across those things, you'll see all that data is now available to them. Again, that same slicing, dicing, moving down information, but then I can also, just like I did before, come in and easily navigate through those different scenarios. So either working with Excel, if that's my comfort level, or working in a web environment, if I'm a higher level user that just needs to navigate and look at reports, all that is available to you to actually deploy this information and get that information out into your users' hands as part of the technology.